So today we're going to be looking at what's inside here. I bought this several weeks ago, but only got around to collecting it yesterday. And quite excited to have this. I haven't got one of these generation computers from this manufacturer, so that's quite good. It was being sold as used. eBay has a very kind of clear definition of what used is, but I find that sellers tend to have a slightly variable interpretation of what used means. Sometimes used means it switches on and the lights come on, but you can't use it. Well, it didn't explode. So yeah. Hopefully this one is working. I got it for a very good price because it was collection only, and I can see why it's collection only. It's quite old and potentially fragile. And these, you know, they don't like survive being in the post very much in my experience. They're not necessarily really well wrapped. But because it was collection only, not a lot of people were interested in bidding. So I got it for a very reasonable price. If it's fully working, I'd be very, very happy. If it's partly working, I'd still be happy because it's quite an interesting little machine. So let's get it out. Right. Floppy disk. It says multi-soft on it. Test 3.exe setup disk. Standard SCO 386 toolbox. It's that must have been a SCO Linux Unix, I should say, install disk, which has been repurposed. So that's interesting. Power cable. Got millions of them, but it's always nice to have one in the box. And then there is the device itself. Nothing else. So here we have a Toshiba T3100e, and if you kind of know already what these are, they're basically a 286 based luggable. So these aren't portable in the sense it's a laptop kind of configuration. If you look around the back here, there's an IAC mains port. There is no battery for this. And when we open up, you'll see why that is. So these were luggable rather than, you know, for use on the go. Around the back, we've got the power input and the switch, but we've also got a carrying handle. We'll look at that in a minute. Down the side here, you've got a floppy drive. Oh, that's a bit disappointing. The early models of this came with a red eject button. I was looking forward to that, but this one's got a grey one. And then there's a little port here, serial B, so it sounds like it might have two serial ports, probably for the mouse. And then there's a selector here that tells one of the ports on the back whether it's an A or B drive or whether it's a parallel printer port. Around the front, got the catch. Here there's a blanking cover. I can't remember what that's for. That might be for an external floppy. That's where you plug that external floppy in if you've got the switch. There's a blanking plate here. This, in the early versions, came with 2 floppy disks, and the later versions, which this is because it's an E, comes with a hard drive on this side, so no floppy disk here. So just going back to the back, what you've got is this handle which pulls out, but it also then turns down to form a little footstool. And we've got serial, parallel, and RGB ports. So here, this is an RGB, not VGA, so you need an EGA monitor for this for it to work properly if you're going to use the external display. But it will display external graphics. And here, there's a blanking plate because there is actually a half-size ISA slot in here. So these are a little bit expandable, even though they weren't battery operated. So the reason I wanted to get this in particular, the screen opens fairly well, hinge doesn't feel too loose. The reason I wanted to get this is because of the display. So these come with a gas plasma display, which was a kind of display technology that was around in the kind of mid to late 80s, early 90s, because it was better than the LCD technology at the time. It gave much better contrast, and it was kind of like a sharper picture. So a lot of computers that were luggable were using them. The problem with them is they work at very high voltage and they draw a lot of current, so you can't run them off batteries very easily. Battery life will be very poor, and that's why they were put on the ones that were luggable. And these devices were not really meant to be laptops to be used on the move. They were really designed to be transportable desktop replacements. Here it is. It's looking pretty good condition actually, this one. It's pretty clean, nice keyboard. Compared to the ones without the E, so this is a slightly later model that had a 12 megahertz 286 instead of an 8 megahertz 286. They've changed this keyboard very slightly as well. I don't remember there being a function button on the earlier models. We'll see what that does. Should we get it plugged in and turned on? That's very exciting. Okay, so it's booted straight up. Must have been on already. So it comes with 1 megabyte of RAM, which is the earlier ones only came with 640k. Time of day clock stopped, invalid configuration. So the CMOS battery is dead, which is obviously F2 to run the setup utility. Now there is a little bit of distortion here on the display. So the display, because it was described as used, I was really hoping the display would be perfect. It's actually unusual to find one that's perfect now that they're kind of 40 years old plus. So that's a bit of a shame. It might improve as it warms up. I was wondering, is there a contrast control on these, or is it all done with electronics? Right, so let me just zoom in so we can see the BIOS. There we go. So I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of shimmer there on the screen. I've got a very slow shutter speed on to get rid of any refresh synchronization issues, so you may not be able to see it actually. But that's the BIOS. So it's recognised there is a hard disk, so that's nice. Base memory is 640k, so it's got some extended memory. It's running in internal CGA mode, text mode, and the printer port is set to output only. Cool. I'm not going to change any of that. I'm just going to press F10 to reboot and see if we get anything on this display. Well, there you go. So just the camera a little bit. Hopefully you can get the image slightly clearer. So it's booted straight into DOS from the BIOS, and there seems to be some kind of shell program going on here, which I don't recognise. It's not the DOS shell. So, Alt exit maybe, exit, escape. F10 for actions, exit shell. Okay, so let's go back to the command prompt. So it's Toshiba MS-DOS 4.01. So it's Toshiba branded MS-DOS. Version 4.1. Version 4 was, overall of MS-DOS was a short-lived version because there were some bugs in it. There was a weird bug where if you access 2 bits of data, one after the other, and they were exactly 32 megabytes apart, it would corrupt the file. So that's a very rare edge case scenario, but obviously it did cause some problems because version 4 of DOS disappeared very, very quickly and was replaced by version 5 not long after. But this is a version 4.01, maybe it had a bug fix applied to it. The screen's not bad. There is some just horizontal banding just here in the middle of the screen. Let's see what MS Diagnostics says. So it doesn't say anything. Let's go. Oops. Hard to type from the side. So we're in a file directory called DOS1. Let's see what's higher up. So we've got command.com, DOS1, config.sys, auto-exec back, calc, armor. Let's scan this at a file called A. Armor, that could be a tank game, I suppose. Calc is presumably some kind of calculator. It's weird that the DOS directory is called DOS1, but and there's no Microsoft Diagnostics. That must have come with version 5 onwards. But there was this kind of little shell, wasn't there? So let's just reboot. In fact, we don't need to do. We just type auto-exec again. So this little shell that's come up, F1 for help. File system. Yeah, it tells you there's a file system. So I don't really recognise this. Change colours, DOS utilities, command prompt. Let's go to file system. So it's showing you some kind of tree. Yeah, this is interesting. I don't remember this. Options. Display options, file options, show information. So it's showing the drive information. So that's quite useful anyway. So what we've got is a 20 megabyte hard disk on this one, and it's about quarter full. Cool. We're going to have a look at this in some more detail in a bit. I don't recognise this shell though. If anybody knows what this is, I'd be interested to know. It isn't the DOS shell, is it? Because that looks completely different. F10 exit. Arrange options. Not sure how you go back. There you go, just pressing exit that. Change colours. That's changing colours of the shell, it's not changing colours of the screen. So we'll cancel that. DOS utilities. Just there, your standard command line utilities there. And then we can exit to the command prompt. Although it's still in the shell. How much memory? Okay, so even inside the shell there's 544 megabytes of RAM free, so that's kind of a usable amount if you wanted to use the shell. Okay, we'll look at this in a bit more detail in a moment. It's interesting because the BIOS only has 2 hard disk types in its CMOS, so you can either have type 12, which would be the 40 megabyte, or type 11, which is the 20 megabyte versions. There are no other options at all. You can have a no drive option. I believe it does take normal IDEs, although I think the cable configuration is a little bit proprietary. I haven't taken it apart yet. If you want to use something else, you're going to have to use a software overlay like on-track disk manager to be able to access a different type of disk. So the base memory, you can change that, and if you do, if you reduce it to 512, you get 512 of expanded memory instead. But it makes much more sense to have that 640 and only have the 384 for the which you can use for upper memory in later versions of DOS. Plasma font style, so you can have single or double. Not quite sure what that means. Different font sets. Let's have Northern European. No, that's not. Okay, so in terms of displays, you can have the internal CGA. So this has got a CGA, I think I said EGA, but it's got CGA graphics on this. And you can have it in 80 by 25 text mode, 40 column mode. You can have the external CGA instead in either of those. And it also supports MDA by the looks of it, using an external monitor. Internal CGA disabled. So you might, this has got the ISA slot, so you might be able to use an alternative video card in here. So it looks like external other internal CGA disable or external internal CGA enable. So it looks like you could have the internal CGA panel working and put a Hercules card in the ISA slot and have an external monochrome display at the same time, maybe, which is interesting. It seems weird for a laptop to have more than one display card, but it does seem to support that. Expansion card, there's a proprietary Toshiba port inside, which allows you to have either a modem or an interface for an external case that has several ISA slots. I think it's 5 ISA slots in it. So you could use this as a desktop replacement. So that's interesting. And then the printer port you can use bidirectional or just output only. Or using the switch on the side, you can switch that to an external floppy disk drive. So that's all what's happening in the BIOS. Is it going to support Y2K? I don't suspect it is, because this is from I think 1987. There's no turbo mode on here. When it starts, I think it starts in 12 megahertz 286, but I think it's got a 16 megahertz version mode as well, which you can access using a key combination. I'm surprised you can't access it in the BIOS as well. But let's save that. Let's reboot. See if it gets confused by the date. So I'm going to press F1 to continue this time, and it is booting off the hard drive as before. So let's exit. F10 exit. Okay. So let's see two things. Let's see what's on this floppy drive, and let's see if the floppy disk drive is working at all. So let's put it right protected before we start, because there may be something important on here. Just looking at the disk surface, seems to be okay. So let's put that in. I'm assuming it's drive B. Oops. Why would I assume that? I'm assuming it's drive A. And there is one thing on this drive, and it's an app called test3.exe. This apparently is the Toshiba configuration. So if you can't access the BIOS from the booting process, you can access it from this apparently. So let's have a little look. Floppy drive certainly working. So it's a diagnostic menu. So we can do run diagnostic tests. We can set up the system, or we can go back to DOS. Or we can go to setup. So I'm not sure what system configuration and setup are, in what way they are different. Okay, so system configuration just is a summary, whereas going to setup allows you to change those things. There's no maths coprocessor on this particular model. Hopefully you can see those horizontal lines. They're quite subtle, but they are definitely there. So let's try going into setup. Yeah, so it's taken us back to the same place. So that's good. So we can S1 to exit. Let's run the diagnostics to see what it says. Test the floppy disk drive. I'm going to skip that because we don't want to wear out that drive. Test the hard disk drive, yes. Test the printer, no, because we haven't got one attached. Okay, so it's doing a memory test. And it hasn't given me an indication of how long it's going to take, but that was pretty quick. It's showing different attributes on the screen, and that all seems to be correct. Showing 80 column mode, 40 column mode, and now 80 column mode. And then it's showing you the 320 by 200 CGA in 4 colors. Now, this screen I don't think supports more than one level of amber. So I think, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but these are dithered. So these aren't solid colors. I don't think it can do that. I think it's just one shade on or off, and then it dithers the colors instead. Hopefully you can see those lines a little bit better. So does it make a difference if I tilt the screen? No, so it's not a cable issue. I think it is a screen issue. But we've moved up to the 640 by 400. So CGA modes are standard, but it also has some extended modes, and I think they're more like the Olivetti modes, unlike the Paradise Plantronics modes that are in the Amstrad PC. So similar in the sense that you get the higher resolution in more colors, but not quite the same. Okay, so it's come back to the main menu. It didn't report any issues, so I'm assuming everything's okay. So yeah, so that's a useful little app on that floppy, and it's also shown us that the floppy disk drive is working. This is a 720K disk, so I think The 3100e, I think that does have a 144 floppy disk. The E means it's a slightly later version, and it was the enhanced with a 16 megahertz processor and the ability to increase the memory, which unfortunately is in Toshiba specific expansion slots, I think. So I think this will read 144s. Let's try a 144. Yes, it's worked. Okay, so this is a Windows 95 boot disk as it happens, but it's managed to read that fine. So this obviously is a 144 base floppy, which is nice. So this came with it, and obviously that was originally for SEO Unix for 386. Multisoft, I got a feeling that rings a bell. Is that a spreadsheet? That was multi-plan, wasn't it? I don't know what Multisoft is, but it was available in DD install format. Interesting. I always get a bit sad when I see repurposed discs. It would have been nice to keep the original. So anyway, that's just one of those things, isn't it? All right, let me just quickly show you something slightly different. So no, you're not seeing double. This is the Toshiba we've just been looking at, and this is an Amstrad ALT-286. I wonder where they got their inspiration from. There is not a lot of difference, either in the size or even in the colour. Both are very similar key layouts, even the same colorings. You know, it's hard. It's not really difficult to find an idea where Amstrad got their inspiration for their 286. I haven't turned this on for a little while. Last time I turned it on, it did work. So let's just do that. And you'll see one of the main differences. Let's just change the angle. One of the main differences between these two laptops is that the Amstrad did include an LCD, not a plasma. The Amstrad's also got a much noisier fan. So let's just turn that off for a moment. That might improve the screen readability. So hard disk failure, I haven't run this for a while, so it's possible that the hard drive is seized up. Let's just exit out of that BIOS. See if we can get this one to work. Oh, that's weird. Okay, it's got the date wrong, but it's at least it's in the correct century. So the CMOS battery in here might be working to a certain extent. That's really interesting, isn't it? So going to press F10 to exit. Even got the same function key combinations, and is also running MS-DOS. So we'll do version on there. So this has still got the original install that it came with when I got it. I haven't cleaned it up yet. I haven't accessed the hard drive in case the plastics are a little bit brittle. But they are remarkably similar, aren't they? It's not difficult at all to imagine that the Amstrad engineers will say, oh, Alan wants us to build a 286, what should we do? And they probably had a quick look down the local high street, found what was on sale, and pretty much copied it. This is taking slightly longer to boot. It's doing a virus scan, which is why. So this is running 6.2.2, this is running version 4. I'm guessing this isn't the Amstrad specific OS install. We haven't got MS diagnostics on there, unfortunately. We can put it on a floppy though. So let's just see how similar they are. So this is a 286 at either 12 or 16 megahertz, and this is a 286. It doesn't say how fast it is, but it's running at 12 megahertz for memory. Memory 640k base and 384 extended, exactly the same as that one. So this has got a VGA graphics, so that's one area where the Amstrad's a little bit better. No network, obviously. No mouse. It says it's got a game adapter. I'm not sure that it has. That's the second computer in a row, and they've both been Amstrads, I think, that where it's detected a game adapter and there isn't one. I know it was a Viglin. It's detected a game adapter. As far as I know, there isn't one in there. Bit cool if there was. Disk drives A, C, and H. Interesting. So this has got a fixed disk. It's a 40 megabyte, and it's got a 70 megabyte. I doubt it's very much so that it's got 2 hard disks in here. So maybe it's partitioned weirdly. I'll have to have a look into that at some point. But otherwise, they are very, very similar, aren't they? Almost exactly the same colour. The Toshiba's finish is a little bit nicer. The Amstrad's done its usual coloured logos, and the Toshiba's a little bit more subtle. But I just thought it was very interesting just to compare those two. They are very, very similar. Right, let's turn this off and get back to the Toshiba. If I can find the on-off switch. So I don't know if you can hear it, but Toshiba isn't quiet, but it's a lot quieter than the Amstrad. The fan in the Amstrad's a little bit more hectic. Amstrad also has a carry handle. This time it's in the front rather than the back, so you can't use it as a stand like you can in the Toshiba. The Amstrad does have this though. So the Amstrad, because it doesn't use a plasma, because it uses an LCD, it does have a battery pack. It's NiCad. I've never tried to run it off this, so I don't know if this is working, but I don't know if that's what was keeping the date and time going. So that's very interesting. But yeah, so the Toshiba is mains only. Now I've also got a T3200 on order, because I was looking for a Toshiba with a glass plasma display and 2 came up at the same time. So hopefully in a day or so we're going to get the space filled with a 3200. And what's interesting about that is that although the 3200 is a higher model number, I think they both come out at very similar times, and the Toshiba 3200 is a kind of slightly higher end model in that it's got EGA, but it's got some of the more limitations than the 3100e. So I think the 3100e, you know, it kind of leapfrogged the 3200 almost, but they did keep it, if you like, crippled with the CGA adapter in it. So let's turn this off. So coincidentally, the other Toshiba has turned up on the same day. So this is the 3200 and this is the 3100. And one thing you can see between the two is that this is quite a lot bigger. Not massive though, but it's a little bit longer. It's about the same depth, but it's definitely a lot wider. It's probably another 3 inches wider, but the overall design is very similar. It's a slightly more brown plastic, and this is definitely grey. 2 catches instead of 1. But a very similar layout. This one's not quite as in good condition, it's a little bit grubby. It's got sticker residue on it. I haven't tried turning this on yet. Keyboard actually is not as nice on the 3200. 3100's got a slightly nicer keyboard. Very similar layout. And because the 3200 is a bit bigger, they've got room for a dedicated number pad. So if you're doing your accounts or spreadsheets, that might be an advantage. They've got similar screens, although this one looks slightly more widescreen, so it may be that it's got a slightly different pixel ratio. But otherwise, the overall design is very, very similar between the two. But a 3100 just looks a little bit cleaner, and it's just a little bit more compact. So we'll be doing a video on this on another day, but let's get back to the 3100e. So what we can do is we can have a look, see if we can use the Norton utilities to undelete any of the files that may be useful on this hard drive. I'm not interested in this person's personal documents what I'm interested in is whether there's any Toshiba specific stuff that's on this laptop that would be really worth saving. So let me just readjust the camera and then we'll give it a go. And then we'll exit to DOS. Then we'll have a look. See what's on here. So for undelete we want Norton Utilities. Not quick undelete, QU. So we're going to try and unerase. So we don't want to unerase from drive A, so we want to change this to C. And we're going to change the directory to the root one. And there's only 2 files in there, an old config.sys and this one here that's got a weird numerical name. I don't think that's anything Toshiba related, so we probably don't want to delete any of that. So we're going to change the directory. I don't think there's going to be anything in. Yeah, there's nothing in there. So in fact, there's nothing on here. It looks like this drive has been wiped already, which is a shame. But there you go. So let's go back to the main menu. Let's just get some technical information on the drive. So yeah, that's another hint that the drive's been wiped, is that all the files that are on there are all contiguous at the very beginning. There's no gaps. So it looks like it was formatted and started again. It's a 20 megabyte drive, we knew that already. 3/4 of it is free. Let's go for system information. So it's Toshiba 3100 running DOS 4. It's got an ALT-286, we knew that. Nothing very exciting there. It's 11.7 times faster than the original IBM PC XT. We didn't specify drive, so it doesn't know that we wanted a benchmark drive C, so let's do that. So one of the disadvantages of the benchmarking drives is that you always run the risk of breaking them. The kind of excessive stress on the drive from testing it can sometimes cause them to fail. Hopefully not. No, brilliant. So the drive is also 5 times quicker than the original XT hard drive, which is nice. So an overall system performance index of 9.5 on Norton system information. It's pretty decent. So hopefully that will show when we do some shenanigans with some software. So what we're going to do in the next few videos is put some games on here, see how they perform with this glass plasma display. I really like the look of it. It's such a unique type of display, so much to the point that people do imitate it in some of the emulators and that are available for retro computers. So, you know, I think it was quite a light device type around at the time. It was certainly less tiring on the eyes in theory than really poor LCDs that were available, but really high power consumption, and they seem to be a little bit flaky. This one has got some artifacts on it. It hasn't got vertical lines, interestingly, it's got horizontal lines. A lot of them have stopped working, whereas the LCDs are still going. So, you know, this was a kind of a very short-lived technology, but it's really nice to see it in a modern day context. So that's all for this video. We'll be seeing this computer again in the future. I hope you find the video useful. We'll also be looking at Amstrad at some point. But for now, goodbye.